Welcome to our channel, all friends. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe my channel and press the bell icon to stay update for new videos. Thanks. Let's start new video. At the wedding reception, my in-laws gave us airplane tickets as a gift to visit the mountainous regions, along with covering all our accommodation expenses there. Hearing this, my happiness knew no bounds. I had always wanted to visit the mountains. I had heard so much about their beauty, especially that the young women there were not only beautiful but breathtaking to behold. I had always been a romantic and flirtatious person at heart. I started thinking to myself that once I got there, I would fully enjoy the beauty of that region. Sitting beside me was my wife Farzana, a very kind and virtuous girl. She too was happy to hear about the honeymoon. However, my mother wasn't pleased at all. She said, "What kind of gift is this? It would have been better if they gave you a motorcycle or a car. At least that would have been useful for a lifetime. They'll blow through 100,000 rupees in 10-15 days and gain nothing from it." My mother was a woman of the old times. She considered things like honeymoons frivolous and inappropriate. My father, in hushed tones, even said, "What shameless people! Who gives honeymoon tickets to their daughter at a wedding reception? I don't like them one bit." It took a lot of effort to stop my father from saying all that in front of Farzana. I also tried to explain to my mother, "She's the daughter of such a wealthy family. You should thank God that a millionaire's daughter became your daughter-in-law without you having to move a finger. Look at the amount of dowry she brought. The motorcycle and car will come too. Just don't say such things in front of her right now." But how long could I hold my family back? Most of the guests who came to the wedding shared the same mindset. Everyone thought that gifting a honeymoon ticket to a daughter was a shameless act. Such conversations were happening around my house, and some of them had even reached my wife Farzana's ears. The poor girl was feeling embarrassed, and her heart was hurting. She had married me out of love and didn't know much about my family or the way they thought. I was the one who explained to her, "Don't take Amma and Abba's words to heart. People from the older generation often think this way. I'm here, aren't I? We'll have a great time together." I had made some basic preparations for the trip, bought a few warm clothes since winter had just begun, and it's always colder in the mountains. I also took Farzana shopping and let her buy whatever she liked. Then, 2 days later, we took a flight to Lahore first, and from there traveled by road to the mountain regions. We had already booked a good hotel there. Farzana was holding my hand and looked so happy. She was completely absorbed in the new scenery around her. She had always dreamed of traveling the world, and seeing her love for it, her family had gifted us the tickets. Walking on the winding paths, she held my hand and spoke to me with love. But my eyes were wandering, drawn to the beautiful faces all around. Since arriving in that region, I had seen beauty after beauty, and I was dying to reach out and have it for myself. But I was bound. Farzana was with me. She was a dusky-skinned, plain-looking girl, the kind you didn't feel drawn to or excited to talk to. I, on the other hand, was a tall, handsome young man. I was the kind of man who could easily attract any beautiful girl, but I had married Farzana of my own free will and happiness. The only reason I had married her was because she was the daughter of a rich father. She had no shortage of money, and I knew that marrying her would completely change my fate. But deep inside, because of my flirtatious nature, I was somewhat unhappy. My eyes were far more drawn to the mountain girls working in the fields than they were to Farzana. As we walked further, we reached a small village. The village was stunning, and the girls there were even more beautiful, fair-skinned and graceful. Then I saw a girl herding sheep and goats. The moment I saw her, my eyes locked onto her. It felt like a heavenly angel had descended to earth. I had never seen such a beautiful face before. I was completely lost in her beauty. Suddenly, I snapped out of my trance as I felt my wife shaking me. Farzana had noticed where my eyes were fixed and, clearly upset, shook me and asked, "Did you come here with me or alone?" Sensing her irritation, I quickly changed my tone and said, "Look at how beautiful those baby goats are. I was thinking of getting a couple for you as a gift." I quickly hid the truth from my wife, that I had been staring not at the goats, but at the girl. Hearing that, a smile returned to Farzana's face. She said, "Yes, they really are adorable." She moved forward and began petting the baby goats, while I approached the girl who was herding them. The moment she saw me, she greeted me with a polite salam and asked, Sir, do you need anything? I nodded and looked into her blue eyes. She quickly lowered her gaze in embarrassment and, avoiding eye contact, said, "This is our village, and whenever tourists come here, we try our best to welcome them. Would you like something to eat?" She said this while glancing toward my wife. Farzana shook her head in refusal, but I jumped in and said, "I would like to eat whatever is the most special thing your village has to offer." She happily rushed off to a small house and, after a short while, returned with a sweet made of dried fruits. She said, "This is our village's special halwa." As I took the container from her hands, I gently brushed my fingers against hers. She noticed it and smiled at me. That one smile gave me confidence. I could tell she liked me too. It was obvious I was a tall, handsome young man. Any girl could be drawn to me. Avoiding Farzana's gaze, I stole another glance at the girl. Then, holding the container, my wife and I went and sat down to eat. We finished the halwa, and by then the girl had moved on, herding her goats further away. I then started walking back to the hotel with my wife. On the way, we paused by a river for a while, but my thoughts kept circling back to that shepherd girl. She was so beautiful that if I could, I would have reached out and made her mine. Farzana kept chatting with me, talking about the places we had seen and her excitement about the trip. But my mind was elsewhere. I was only responding half-heartedly, lost in thought. In fact, I had already made up my mind. I would come back to this spot tomorrow and try to meet that girl again. Her beauty had completely enchanted me. It was only the second day of our trip. That night, we returned to the hotel exhausted. Farzana fell asleep right away, snoring softly. I began to feel irritated. What kind of honeymoon was this? Just mountains and rivers? My wife wasn't giving me any time or attention. She spent the whole day sightseeing and then collapsed into bed at night. But for me, a honeymoon meant something entirely different. When Farzana didn't give me the attention I expected, I closed my eyes and, in the screen of my imagination, pictured that beautiful girl in my arms. The next morning, I left the hotel before my wife woke up and headed straight to the place where the girls had been herding sheep the day before. She was there again. It was a village, and people woke up early to begin their daily work. As soon as she saw me, she smiled, greeted me with salam, and asked about Farzana. I told her Farzana was still asleep, and then I quietly added, "I came here to meet you." Hearing that, her smile deepened. She said, "Sir, do you want some halwa again?" I gently shook my head and leaned toward her, saying no. "Today I want to drink jam." My gaze was fixed on her beautiful rosy lips. For a moment she paused and looked at me. Then, as she understood the meaning behind my words, her cheeks turned pink. She said shyly, "Sir, please have a seat. I'll bring you some halwa." After a little while, she returned with the same special dried fruit halwa and sat down beside me. I started asking her about herself, and she told me, "I live with my father. He's very old and often unwell due to the cold, so he stays inside. I herd these goats to make a living. My father is living his final days, and he wants to get me married before he dies." As she said that, she gave me a meaningful look and then turned her eyes toward the beautiful waterfall flowing nearby. There was silence between us, but the sound of the waterfall filled the air with the melody that made the moment feel magical. I had sat in this same spot just yesterday with Farzana, but I hadn't felt the beauty of the place than the way I did now with Gulruk. With gentle affection, I asked her, "Do you like someone, Gulruk?" My tone softened as I spoke. She looked at me deeply and replied, "What does it matter who I like? Just because you love someone doesn't mean you get to have them." I sensed the affection in her eyes for me, and without hesitation, I took her hand and said, "Gulruk, if you truly want it, love can be yours." She was completely taken aback by what I had just said. "Really? Can I truly have the one I love?" she asked in surprise. I nodded in affirmation and gently began to caress her soft palm. Her delicate, rosy hands were fully enclosed in mine, and not once did she try to pull them away. She sat calmly, without any fear of the villagers, without any concern for the world. She gazed at me for a long while and then softly said, "Your wife must be waiting for you. What if your honeymoon gets ruined?" As she stood up to leave, I gripped her hand firmly and said, "If you say yes, I can give you far more happiness and time than her. To be honest, I don't even like my wife. She's a necessity in my life, not love. She was stunned by my words. I looked into her eyes and added, Gulruk, may I say something? Please don't be upset. When she shook her head in refusal, I whispered, Gulruk, I think I've fallen in love with you. I want to make my life beautiful. I want to start a new journey with you. The moment she heard this, her eyes lit up. She replied, your closeness would bring happiness to me as well, Fahim. But your wife, her eyes were filled with countless questions. Would your wife allow this? Is our union even possible? Saying this, she adjusted her scarf and started walking ahead. And I stood there, astonished. How could a simple village girl from these mountain regions speak such refined language? How could she express her emotions so easily? There was no hesitation in her manner, no modesty or shame. Instead, she seemed bold and completely ready to accept my closeness. The only thing holding Gulruk back was the fear of my wife. And as for my wife, well, I could take care of her quite easily. She had walked quite a distance ahead, so I got up and ran to catch up with her. Listen, Gulruk, I said, if Farzana wasn't between us, would you accept me? She immediately nodded yes. All right then, I said, I'll make arrangements to deal with my wife soon, and one night I'll come to take you with me. You'll come with me to the hotel, won't you? I looked at her with hopeful eyes, and again she nodded without hesitation. Then I returned to the hotel. Farzana was sitting there, clearly furious. The moment she saw me, she burst out in anger. Where were you so early in the morning? I've been up for a while waiting for you, Fahim. I was scared. It's a strange place. How could you just leave me alone like that? I looked at her with irritation and said, the way you were snoring last night like a man, I was the one who got scared. Is this what a honeymoon is supposed to be? I deliberately pouted, knowing full well that she couldn't bear to see me upset. This was the only way to dodge her questions for the moment. She immediately came close, wrapped her arms around my neck, and sat down at my feet. Why are you upset? She whispered. I know I fell asleep early last night, but what can I do? These mountains exhaust me so much that I don't even realize when I fall asleep. I turned my face away him. Avoiding her gaze, so she gently whispered in my ear, tonight will be a beautiful night. I promise you. Please don't be upset. Reluctantly, I let a faint smile appear on my face, then took her hand and led her to another village. But no matter where we went, I couldn't find the same beauty I had seen in Gulruk. We spent the whole day wandering around, and quietly, I also bought some sleeping pills from a small herbal medicine shop. Farzana had no idea about this. When we returned to the hotel, exhausted, I didn't get the chance to give Farzana the medicine. She refused any tea, coffee, or herbal drinks despite my repeated requests. She just went into the washroom. I lay on the bed, thinking about Gulruk, but soon I was startled when Farzana emerged from the washroom in a rather inappropriate outfit. She was wearing a semi-naked nightgown, with a smile on her face and red lipstick on her lips. Slowly she walked towards me, and in my mind, I couldn't help but picture Gulruk in her place. If only Gulruk were here instead of Farzana, the scene would be so different. My desire would have been at its peak, and I would have embraced her passionately. But with Farzana, I felt no interest. Her dark complexion had distanced her from my heart. I struggled through the rest of the night with her. She was completely lost in her emotions, while I, out of obligation, surrendered to her. The night passed in this uncomfortable way, and then, with great difficulty, I separated myself from her, feigning exhaustion, and fell asleep. She too was tired, and soon she drifted into sleep. The next day, I somehow managed to find a way to meet Gulruk again. I promised her I would come to take her that night. She agreed, and I also promised her that I would take her sick father to the city for treatment. The rest of the day I spent with Farzana, showing her love and care, trying to keep her from suspecting anything. In the evening, without asking her, I secretly made her drink the tea with the sleeping pills mixed in. She drank it and soon fell into a deep sleep. After waiting some time to ensure she was sound asleep, I quietly slipped out of the hotel. The night was pitch black and eerily silent in these areas. As I navigated the uneven, treacherous paths, fear gripped my heart. Yet my reckless passion and romantic nature drove me forward, compelling me to reach Gulruk at any cost. When I finally arrived at her village and knocked on her door, she seemed to have been expecting me. "Come in quickly," she whispered urgently. "Father's sleeping deeply and mustn't know you're here." Without hesitation, she grabbed my hand and we hurried back to the hotel together. Along the way, when she asked about my wife, I reassured her that Farzana was fast asleep. The moment we entered my hotel room, Gulruk froze in horror at the sight of Farzana lying on the bed. "Your wife is here," she gasped in panic. "Didn't you get a separate room?" I shook my head dismissively, claiming Farzana had taken sleeping pills and wouldn't wake easily. Gulruk reluctantly sat on the bed, where I soon joined her, holding her hand while spinning sweet nothings and painting rosy fantasies of our future together. Just as she melted into my embrace, disaster struck. Farzana's eyes fluttered open. My blood ran cold as my wife sat up slowly, her devastated gaze piercing through me. "Father warned me you were unworthy," she said bitterly, her voice trembling with betrayal. "But love blinded me. And now I find you've brought another woman to our honeymoon suite?" The contempt in her eyes revealed she understood exactly what kind of man I was. Gulruk turned on me furiously. "You knew she could wake up," she screamed, shoving me away before storming out, leaving me alone to face the wreckage of my deceit. The two women I'd manipulated now saw me for what I truly was, and their scorn would haunt me forever. Shame burned through me as I stood exposed before my wealthy wife. My pathetic attempt at deception ending in humiliating failure. Farzana began packing her bags with trembling hands. "I'm leaving first thing in morning," she declared coldly, "and taking divorce." I fell to my knees, clutching her feet, babbling excuses about being seduced by mountain beauty, my mind clouded by passion. But she remained unmoved. Her furious outburst attracted the hotel waiter assigned to our room. His eyes widened, recognizing Gulruk's name when mentioned. "You know Gulruk?" I asked incredulously. A knowing smirk spread across his face as Farzana motioned him inside. "That Gulruk is infamous here," he revealed. "She traps tourists in fake love affairs to rob them blind. She's fleeced dozens of our guests, though we can't stop it since men willingly bring her to their rooms." His gaze turned pitying. "But you're a married couple. How did she even get in here?" The revelation struck like lightning. Not only had I betrayed my wife, but I'd been played myself, my head bowed in crushing shame while Farzana's eyes flashed with bitter vindication. "Thank God you've nothing worth stealing," she spat. "Every luxury you enjoy comes from my money. But no more." No amount of begging moved her. By dawn, she'd informed her father of everything. The bitterest pill? Realizing the beauty I'd risk everything for was a common scammer. I couldn't even meet my own gaze in the mirror. The man staring back was unrecognizable. The entire affair had been nothing but deception. As I gathered details about Gulruk during our departure, the shocking truth emerged. She had ruthlessly cheated numerous men. There was no ailing father, no family. She lived alone, preying on tourists by ensnaring them with her beauty. I couldn't help but recall her bold demeanor, realizing too late how differently she behaved compared to the genuinely modest village girls who avoided interacting with strange men. Upon returning home, my wife sent me divorce papers, demanding separation. Despite my repeated pleas at her family's doorstep, she remained adamant. Self-loathing consumed me. I had foolishly thrown away a wife who loved me unconditionally. She wasn't conventionally beautiful, but her heart was pure. As the daughter of a wealthy man, she lacked nothing yet chose to embrace my humble life wholeheartedly. Living in my small home, serving my parents, enduring their harsh words with grace. She had been willing to spend her entire life contentedly with me, while I proved myself unworthy of such devotion. In one final attempt, I went to her home, fell at her feet weeping, and begged forgiveness. Whether her heart softened or divine intervention occurred, she miraculously agreed to return. Since that day, she has not only accepted my parents again, but serves them lovingly. I too have reformed completely. I lead a straight life now, never glancing at another woman. Sometimes the most beautiful faces hide the ugliest deceptions, revealed only when it's almost too late. By God's grace, I escaped that trap in time. Today, when I look at my wife, I no longer see wealth, but a noble, beautiful soul. My life's greatest blessing. To all who journey to distant places, remember such areas harbor both good people and predators who exploit loneliness in reckless desires. Stay vigilant lest you lose what truly matters.